So starting off, like, who are research partners? So I define a research partner as an individual, group, or organization who make a substantial and direct contribution to one or more parts of the research. So that's like study design, implementation, or even analysis or dissemination. I don't define my partners as participants, right? Like, that to me is very different. If I'm asking you to be a part of a study that I've already developed, that's not necessarily a partner to me. I think that it is important that, like, partners have a seat at the table and we're talking about it, and their opinion can change the direction of what we do. And so rather than think of like, is something community based or is it not, I often like to say, like, community engagement is on a spectrum. And so we can go from a very, like, almost no community involvement, and we see that a lot, right, in research, and it's not surprising, where it's mostly investigator-driven research. The topics, the questions, the surveys, the interview question, everything comes from the researcher or their team at a university, all the way to the other end of where there's just community-driven. So these are topics that are of interest to the community. The way in which studies are designed are like really thinking about like how communities want to do it. And quite frankly, next slide, I think where I usually sit is somewhere in the middle, and that's being honest, right? Like, I don't always do it myself, but then I also don't always give full control over. So, next slide. And so I really do think, so the title is just about the strengths of like how community partnerships can strengthen research. And so I think in two ways. First, with the approach. So I'm gonna make the assumption that many of you are doing some kind of community engaged work, and so really this idea is rooted in trust and trust and respect. And I think that if you, like I said earlier, like if you think about any relationship, right? Like, I don't know that we always consider research as a relationship, but I think if you're doing community engaged work, you probably should. So any of the things you think are important for good relationships: communication, transparency, honesty, all of those things should probably also be baked into your partnerships. The second thing is it really is an opportunity to amplify and engage multiple perspectives, right? And so I know what I know well. I don't always know what I don't know less well, what I know less well, but I think that anytime I've engaged in a partnership, the product is bigger than what I could have ever come up with, and possibly what my partners would have come up with. And so I think that having lots of people at the table allows the best ideas to bubble up. And it also means like being humble that maybe your ideas aren't always the best one. Like mine certainly, like my team regularly reminds me I don't have the best ideas. But right, like I think that, like if our goal is to create the best and the highest possible, highest quality of research, and with the best like product, being okay with your ideas being somewhere on the spectrum. Sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're not, but creating a space where everybody gets to put their ideas in the bucket is a good idea. And then finally, one more thing, it shifts the power imbalance. So, I think that so often in research, the PI or the principal investigator is the person who you look at and like, what do we do next? Where do we go next? Like follow, and so I tell my team, I'm like, at the end of the day, I gotta make some decisions, right? And if it all goes out the window, like I will ultimately be responsible. But otherwise, right, like I want us to have like a flat like leadership model where people can be okay saying like, I disagree with that. Or actually that's great, and did you hear this other person and what they said? And so I think that, yes, while someone has to be responsible for it, right? I think that the process by which decisions are made allows like more people to be involved and feel and take ownership of it beyond just the person who's leading it. And so for the outcome, 3 in particular, there are lots, but these are 3 that I really think are strengths of the partnership. It's like, 1, it facilitates bi-directional learning. So again, I know what I know. I know what I like. Dr. Baptiste Roberts read off my laundry list of things that I've done. So I've been around, and so I know some things. But I work a lot with young people. I was like, I don't know what it's like to be a young person in 2025 in Baltimore. Like, it's just that's not an experience I'm familiar with. So like for me to assume that I know any like to know how people are living or how young people are navigating this space would be a huge oversight. And so not partnering with people, young people, families who are parenting young people in this time would be an oversight for me, because this isn't an experience that I have. And so it's really important to make sure that I can learn from the folks who I also want to eventually impact in a positive way. Okay, so I said, right, so partnership can happen anywhere in the process. And so I will talk today a little bit about a project that is, I don't know, I guess we've been working on it for maybe like 5 years. And in different phases. So we, my team, I've done a lot of work around reproductive, one more back, yeah. I've done a lot of work in sexual and reproductive health here and before I arrived here. And so I'm in schools, I'm in community organizations talking about like healthy, like sexuality and healthy reproductive health. And I just started hearing lots of young people talk about how their parents had really struggled as parents because of their substance use, because they had been incarcerated, so like being in and out of the home, or just because they struggle with mental health. And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. Like, that's not to say that sexual and reproductive health wasn't important, but as a person who wanted to be responsive to the needs and issues of young people where I live and work, I live in Baltimore, down the street, I was like, what exists? What exists for like kids who are trying to navigate a space? And we know that parents are really they play an important role, yes, in early childhood, but even as like young people are transitioning to adulthood, during that adolescent phase, we need something, right? Like we need a safety net. Sometimes that is 1 or 2 parents, but caregivers, we like to say. And so I was like, all right, well, what's out there? And so I'm like scouring the literature, and I'm just like, ugh, I don't like what's here. I think the things that are here are assuming that things are always working out. Like they're assuming that there's somebody there's a parent saying don't do drugs, or they're assuming that like kids know how to find resources. That I just don't think is true. So my team and I, we embarked on this journey for the last 5 years or so to figure out like how do we create a program for young people who have been whose parents have a history of substance use, mental health challenges, or incarceration. Like what would something look like for them? And so I'll talk about the different phases that we've gone through in this research process and the partners along the way that we've engaged. So the first part is intervention development. So we partnered with 3 Black young adults. So we had done all of this like qualitative stuff, and we had like all of these interviews, and we were like, okay, I think we are missing the point. Like that whole project was about sexual and reproductive health, and everything just really came out about families. And so we were like, okay, well, I think we need to shift. And I'm happy to talk to anybody at a later date if you want to know about how my funders felt about this, a shift. And so we reached out to all of our participants. We're like, hey, we want to do something different. Would you be willing to serve as our partners? And so of the like 30, we heard back from like 10, and like ultimately like 3 became like our committed partners. And so we met over like 10 months. And if you're looking at the dates, like COVID's in there, also happy to talk about how we did that. And so we were like, all right, we're going to come together and we're going to create something. Like we're going to create something for you. What would you have liked if like when you were going through these things? And so the first thing that we realized, and so the age are young adults, they're like, you need to start in middle school. We had been working with high school students. They're like, nope. Like if you're trying to prevent substance use for people who have ready access to substances, you gotta start way earlier than you're thinking. I was like, oh, okay, noted. And so I'm like, all right, like middle school, like they're still squirmy. Let's talk about what this looks like. So of course, I'm a researcher. We go look at the literature. We look at other interventions. And so every week we met for 10 months. And even during COVID, we bought like iPads to and hotspots to make sure we could still meet every week and go through like, what does this need to look like? What do the activities need to be? Like, is this too long? Like all of these questions, right? And then we also partnered when they were like, okay, well, we don't want kids to have to snitch on their families because people think they might go to social services. It's like, yes, you're right, we don't. And so we partnered with a children's author. And so we gave her all access to all of our de-identified interviews. And we're like, can you create us a story? create us a story that will align with the modules that we have in this intervention, right? Because I love to read, and so at first I just wanted to use a book. And like, they're like, well, these books are too long and nobody's gonna read them. I mean, we really tried like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We tried like all of these Jacqueline Woodson. I mean, I wanted to have a book, and it just didn't work. And so I was like, all right, we're gonna partner with somebody to help us create something. And so she was amazing. She took out, and like, we back and forth. So we would come, whether we were going over the stories that she wrote or we were going over like different activities, we'd come together and figure out like what makes sense. And so, and we used the consensus process to decide on whatever this final thing would look like. And so the next slide shows our final, the results of this partnership. And again, like, I don't think I would have ever arrived here. First of all, I probably would have never done middle school. I like high schoolers. But here we are, right? And so like this age appropriate, culturally relevant intervention for middle school students. There were a total of 8 sessions. It was like, it can't be too long. And I was like, it's 100 minutes. Because at first we started as 2 hours. They're like, nope, too long. And I was like, can we like, but all the stuff we want to say, we can't get it into, they're like, no, it's too long. I was like, okay, let's try to figure out 100 minutes. And so, and each session starts with one of the stories that was developed by our children's author. So if the session is about like emotion regulation, there's that's another thing. We got all names from people who are from Baltimore. So our main characters are Marshall, after Thurgood Marshall. He's a 13-year-old boy. And then there's Holiday, who is his foster sister from Billie Holiday. And then their little sister is Jada from Jada Pinkett Smith, right? So like, it was like very much like, we are a Baltimore-based like thing, right? And so each session starts with a story, and it tees up, it like prepares students for what they'll learn. And so instead of saying like, what would you do? It's like, well, how do you think Marshall would have responded? Or like, what emotions was Holiday feeling? Like, who else could she have reached out to? And so in each session, so we're like, all right, we got this thing. Yay, we think it's great. We don't really know. So the next part, we're like, all right, well, what do we do now? So we're like, all right, well, we need to figure out like what we're gonna do. And so we go out, we do what's called a process evaluation. We do these focus groups with young people, with potential people who might facilitate it. And some of the things that came out were like, all right, you guys don't talk nearly enough about peers. Like, yes, we understand that you're focused on like the family unit, but like kids this age are really interested in our kids. I'm like, duh, of course. How did I miss that? You need to incorporate technology more, right? I'm an 80s baby. I grew up without technology, and so I don't need it as much, but you're right. Like, if we're working with middle schoolers in 2025, one of the activities I remember specifically, we asked them to map or something. They were like, you need to use Google Maps. Like, nobody's actually looking at a map, ever. They're like, Google Maps, Apple Maps, like something that is electronic, because you asking them to draw their neighborhood, like, count them out. It's like, okay, cool. And then the one other big thing, they were like, okay, yes. And mind you, these stories that our author wrote, they were only one page written. They're like, they were too long. Like, they were too long. Like, I zoned out halfway through. You need a video. And I was like, but I don't have a video. And I was like, well, do we need actors? I mean, for a long time, I was like, I don't think I can do this. And it's expensive, so I don't think I can afford it. And so I was like, okay, like, I'm like pulling different monies, and then I like found some money. And so when someone on my team was like, hey, Terry, like, as you're seeking bids, because one of our commitments is also to try to work with minority-owned businesses, she's like, hey, my cousin is in New York, and he owns this animation team. And then my other cousin, he's out in Cali, at Stanford, getting his MFA in film. Maybe we can invite them in to give us a bid. And I'm like, yes, count us in. So we ultimately went with their bid, Clio Studios. If ever you're looking for animation, they're amazing. And they were great, right? And so like, we presented the thing that we wanted. They presented, and like the reason that we went with them is that they were very open and transparent about like us being involved. They're like, we understand that this is valuable and precious to you, and we want to honor it in a way that you want us to, right? So it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna like grab these like, stock images. Like, they were like, tell us what this person looks like. Tell us what, I mean, we went through the pre-production was a lot. We were like, they didn't want to read all of our transcripts, but they're like, tell us who you envision. And again, being who I am, I'm like the Boondocks. Like I like the Boondocks. I like Riley and I like Huey. And so the rest of my team, they're like, we need to change the hair. Like we need to change how they talk. Like, and so again, making this as something that middle schoolers would like. And so they worked with us, they like back and forth. So we would have our weekly meetings, and every other week they would join us and say like, here's where we are. Like, let us know what you think about this. And so every session, they took the stories that our author had written, the information that we were trying, like the spirit of the session. So they read all the sessions. They're like, all right, here is, and so we say like, no, like you have to end it on a cliffhanger because we want to have these 3 questions to start it. And so back and forth, pre-production, and in the production phase, they solicited voice actors, sent us those. They were like, does this sound like the person? Is this the voice that you want Marshall to have? Or like, what about his friend? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no, he's too deep. He's too old for a 13-year-old. So, and like, again, like back and forth. And so, and I had never, ever in my life, art, I appreciate art. I don't know if I would ever call myself a creator of it. So just being able to lend, like to work with them throughout this process was great. And so and then we went through, we edited and completed the videos. And so the next slide, this is our cast of characters, right? So there's Jada, there's the little one. And so the story centers around Marshall and Holiday. Marshall and Jada are siblings who, their mom passed and then their dad struggled with addiction, and they ended up in foster care. And similarly, so her mom also was struggling with addiction, and this is Coach and Miss May, who ended up taking all of them in at different times. And that's one of the friends who also plays basketball. That's Keith. That's Miss Tasha, the dance teacher, and then that's Miss Jones, the school counselor. And so we see these characters all through the story. And I think that what is interesting about it, so the next thing that we did, I'll talk a little bit about, the thing that I loved about it is because we told them we wanted all shades of brown, right? Like we wanted different shades of brown. We wanted to, it was so much, so detailed. They were like, oh, we were like, Tasha was like, she was a Delta. I was like, and she was a Delta, and she or Holiday had a scar on her arm. They were just so responsive to how we wanted these characters to look and feel and interact with each other. And they're like, well, Coach needs to be tall. If you're the basketball coach, you got to be in shape. Like all of the things, right? So it was great to be able to work with them on a thing that no one on our team, we would have never arrived here if we had not been able to partner with Cleo's. So, of course, like any good interventionist, right? You got to figure out, you got this thing. Let's go pilot it. And so last year we spent some time with Bliss and Baltimore Collegiate, all boys, all girls school, and we piloted the intervention. And so we wanted to, and we partnered with the schools. And I say partnered, not in the sense that, oh yes, we went to recruit. We worked with the principal and identified 2 people at each school. We're like, we want to pay a person. We want to pay a person to essentially be a part of our team. Look at our recruitment materials. Tell us what would be unattractive. Help us figure out this time and cadence of the intervention at your institution, because ultimately, I want to not do this. I wanted to turn it over to someone else. And so we work with them. They helped us think about all right, you can use Miss Thompson's classroom because it's bigger and she has a projector and you got to show this video. Some very things that, again, we would have never known about the school had we not had them working with us. And so they reviewed our materials, they helped it with recruitment and retention. So if we hadn't seen somebody in a session, we offered them after school. We said hey, we haven't seen John, and they're like, oh, their mom was sick and they've been leaving early every day because their dad, I'm like, oh, great, thank you so much. We hadn't heard from him, thank you. Can you ask if we can get that person's contact? So really helping us build those relationships. Our community, our school liaisons at each school. And so next slide, what do we look like? And so we screened 89 people. Of those, 59 were eligible. 57 enrolled. I mean, if any of you do intervention stuff, like people just don't just get enrolling, right? Like, so like, again, I really did just think that it speaks to the relationships that our school liaisons have with our families. But again, I think that it could have not happened if we had not really invested the time and the energy up front. And honestly, we had a list of like 40, no, was it like 40, and then we went down to 18 because one of our other partners was like, you should focus on schools that just are middle schools, because if you do K to 8, they're gonna want you to like do. I was like, oh, okay. So we were focusing on schools, we doing all of these like information interviews, and so we landed at Bliss and Baltimore Collegiate. So those were the results of that. So key takeaways, and yes, I am on time. Like the first point, like if you get nothing, like community partnerships strengthen research. Like I said up front, I don't think that we would have been able to get anywhere in any of the results that we had if it had just been my research team at Hopkins. I think that, you know, partnerships can happen on any and all phases. So for example, I went through the development where we partnered with young adults and children's authors, and then for the animation team during the refinement phase, and then of course the schools and personnel. And I think, again, if you think about how relationships works, you know, my mom always says that people come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I have long goodbyes. And so I still reach out to, like I send, if we have a publication, if we have an infographic, and so along the way, my team and then our partners, we're on Instagram now, and so I'm always sending, like, I find my people, I'm like, did you see this? Just want to make sure. Like right now, our animation team, we started working with them a year and a half ago. And I invited them, I said like, hey, there's this conference coming up, and one of the things that, one of the tracks for abstracts is innovation in intervention research. And I was like, I really think that our partnership was a good one. I like I like the product, I love the way we work. Would you be okay if we submitted an abstract? We submitted an abstract to the Society for Prevention Research. They getting flew out, right? Like they're going to Seattle to present on our behalf. And so I think that like that has helped me continue to build new relationships, because I try to make sure the old ones are maintaining. So we may not see each other for a long time, but I think that we are all trying to make sure that we win in whatever spaces we're in. And so the third point, these partnerships require trust and humility and intentionality, I should add that. And then the key recipes for success is like just thinking about your priority population, making sure that they're at the center of the research, and that they have a voice somehow in the process. And so, you know, they're usually like there to like help fact check and follow up. So that is that, and I just want to say thank you.